The story begins when an average restaurant cook gets summoned to save an isekai world with other heroes. A hooded mage quickly steps up to check the stats of all the heroes, getting impressed by a legendary holy swordsman. Then, he finds 2 expert witches with the power to control powerful elements. And finally, he focuses on Mr. Mukota, who possesses the awe-inspiring talent of ordering online groceries. Mukota asks if he has any other skill, but the mage shakes his head, sealing his fate as a magical delivery boy. He tells Mukota to visit the king to learn about his mission. In the king's room, the fat old monarch tells the heroes to find the demon lord, who is causing trouble for his kingdom of Rieseger. As the king reveals that the demon lord can send the heroes back, the other heroes quickly agree to fight for him, while Mukota feels suspicious of his whole story. He asks the old man if he can sit this adventure out and live like the commoner he is, and the king sends him away with some gold coins. Afterward, he heads out to the city, where everyone stares at his weird corporate wage slave suit. Mukota changes his outfit and rents a room where he checks his stats to learn that he also has a magic storage and appraisal skill. Then, he uses his grocery skill, which opens a holographic online store. He then inserts some money into the screen and buys some quick food to keep him going, thinking that he can make good money as a chef with this skill to leave the plain country. The next morning, Mukota rushes to catch a carriage to the town of Keels. On the way there, he asks a merchant what he's going to sell, who tells him that he's going to sell a very precious item called soap. Mukota feels surprised that soap is so precious and asks the man if he stores his goods in a magic storage. However, the merchant tells him that the magic storage skill is very rare, so he has to carry everything around. Then, Mukota asks him about the appraisal skill and learns that it's a legendary skill that's practically unheard of. The merchant wonders why he's so interested in these rare skills, but Mukota claims that he was just dreaming. Then, the merchant tells Mukota that he made a good call going to a border town because the kingdom is soon planning to seal its borders. Once Mukota gets to Keels, he finds out that the kingdom has banned further carriage services, and a few soldiers tell him that the king is always trying to start wars without reason. Mukota feels glad that he decided to leave the dangerous country, but wonders how to escape without a ride. He visits an adventurer's guild and asks for some bodyguards, and the receptionist tells him he'll need to offer 7 gold coins for his difficult request. Mukota feels surprised by the price, but decides it's better to pay than get trapped in a war-torn country. The receptionist accepts his payment and introduces him to the adventurer Werner, who tells him that his party is ready to leave the next morning. The next day, Mukota sets out for the kingdom of Venan with Werner's party, and they take a break after traveling some distance. As Mukota sets up his kitchen to cook, the adventurers feel surprised by his magical storage and foreign equipment. He serves them some fresh sandwiches, which they all find incredibly delicious. Werner feels guilty for getting luxurious food for free, but Mukota tells him it's not a big deal for him. Seeing his friendly response, Werner nods and promises not to poke his nose into Mukota's secrets. Afterward, the group runs into some bug monsters on the way. Mukota jumps in fear as a bunch of bug guts land near him, and a party member informs Werner that there's an angry boar up ahead. Werner's team turns the boar into a bunch of pork chops, and Mukota stores all its meat in his magic storage. Then, he prepares some special pork soup for them, and the team feels their energy recharging from the hearty food. Mukota wonders why his food is restoring their energy, since he just cooked a normal soup for them. He uses his appraisal skill to check everyone, and spits out his own soup, shocked that his food actually is giving the adventurers a huge stat buff. Thinking that his otherworldly ingredients could also have hidden side effects, Mukota decides to keep his food sources secret to avoid being turned into a slave. While everyone chows away, a pair of green eyes silently stalks them in the night. The next day, Mukota cooks everyone a heavy dish of fried pork, which they instantly devour. However, their joy is short-lived as the legendary Fenrir beast appears behind Mukota. The giant wolf uses its aura points to threaten Mukota into giving it food, but loses them all as it starts chomping on them like a starving puppy. Mukota panics while quickly whipping up more batches of meat to satisfy the hungry dog. After emptying all the stocks of Mukota's food mart, Fenrir stops eating and tells Mukota that he's surprised he could satisfy it with such a small amount of food. Fenrir tells the exhausted cook that it wants to form a contract with him, but Mukota feels worried about befriending such a dangerous creature. He tries to decline Fenrir's offer, but the wolf keeps interrupting him, making it clear that he isn't asking for his consent. Mukota then asks Werner and his scared teammates if it's a good idea to trust the wolf, and finally accepts Fenrir's offer as they nod their heads. Fenrir then calls over Mukota and presses its head against him, which creates a glowing light that signs their partnership contract. Once the contact is done, Fenrir proudly sits down to rest and orders Mukota to cook 3 meals for him every day, leaving him completely stunned. Then, Fenrir asks for a new nickname, and Mukota gives it a dog name like Bob. However, the wolf feels offended that it's getting treated like a house pet and settles for the name Fel. After settling down from their shock, the group starts traveling again, and everyone wonders how they'll enter the border with the massive beast following them. Werner thinks that the Venan royalty will be all over Mukoda, who feels frustrated that he's attracting so much attention. Later, they all settle down for lunch, and Fenrir demands his portion from Mukoda. He tells the big wolf to get its own meat since he doesn't have any ingredients left, and Fel obediently leaves to hunt. Werner's team is surprised that Mukoda can casually order a legendary beast around, but he reminds them that it's only fair that Fel gets the ingredients he wants to eat. Soon, Fel returns with a powerful B-rank rock bird that Werner's party can only dream of touching. Mukoda asks Fel if he can keep the other parts of the bird, and the wolf tells him he can sell everything else as long as the meat ends up in his belly. With his approval, the team skins the bird, and Mukoda cooks the party's lunch. Fel starts getting impatient that he has to wait, but Mukoda reminds him that his giant portions take the longest to cook. After finishing lunch, everyone starts moving towards the border. Mukoda's teammates wonder how the kingdom will react to Fel, who is rumored to have destroyed an entire country out of rage when they finally reach Venan. Mukoda notices the border guards panicking because of Fel, and Werner leaves to explain their situation to them. However, they all end up getting detained by the border guards. The guard captain asks if Fel truly is under Mukoda's control, who asks his pet to explain that he doesn't mean any harm. Fel tells the captain that he won't attack the Venan kingdom if they don't harm his master. So the captain finally allows everyone to enter. Once they're in, Werner warns Mukoda that the Venan kingdom will investigate him because of his extraordinary companion. Mukoda feels upset to get so much attention, but says that he wants to travel the world for sightseeing anyway. So Werner tells him to get an adventurer or merchant license. Mukoda thinks about becoming a merchant, but a party member reminds him that he needs the Adventurer Guild's services to butcher all the monster Fenrir hunts. However, the mage tells Mukoda that he can just register in both guilds at the same time, before they start heading into town. Soon, an annoying servant tries to invite Mukoda to meet his master, and he tries to refuse. However, the servant keeps pestering him to come along, so Fel threatens to obliterate his master's entire bloodline, which finally sends him running away. Werner thinks that the noble family might take action against Mukoda, but the mage reminds him that even the entire Venan army can't defeat Fel. One team member thinks that only a dragon can fight as Fel's equal, and the Fenrir nods, saying that his last fight with a dragon was an even match. After Werner's team finishes glazing Fel, he asks Mukoda to sign their job request completion, and he writes his name on the paper. Werner tells him that they'll go their own ways from here, and they say goodbye to each other. Once they all leave, Mukoda walks to the Merchant Guild, planning to sell the loot from Fel's hunts over there. As he walks into the guild, everyone feels stunned by the oversized husky following him. He asks the attendant for registration, and she explains that the Merchant Guild is independent of any country. Then, she informs Mukoda that the guild has 5 ranks from iron to mithril, before giving him an iron card to set up his portable food stall. Mukoda takes the card and leaves after telling the receptionist that he'll come back to sell his loot to her. Outside, he parks his wolf in a stable while making lunch for both of them. This time, Mukoda puts some steak sauce in Fel's meat, which he enjoys a lot. Then, Mukoda puts a different sauce on the next serving, and Fel gets surprised that the same meat can taste so different with just another sauce. He tries a bunch of different sauces before settling for a nice garlic sauce. After feeding his partner, Mukoda makes a bowl of steak rice for himself and starts to eat, but Fel also gets interested in the rice. Fel enjoys the rice as well, which leaves Mukoda to make some more for his own. He feels grateful that the online delivery skill lets him enjoy good food in a boring world, and heads to bed after dinner. Then, Mukoda remembers to prepare something before going to sleep. The next day, Mukoda heads back to the Merchant Guild, where he shows the receptionist his loot. She takes a look inside the bag and immediately leaves after seeing its content. As Mukoda wonders if he made a mistake, the receptionist soon returns and takes him to a private room, where the guild master reveals that his salt and pepper are of such high quality that they can sell them to the royal family. The guild master offers to buy all of Mukoda's goods and asks where he got them from, but he awkwardly tries to keep his secret. Noticing Mukoda's hesitation, the guild master stops asking and offers 10 gold coins for his goods. Mukoda is shocked, since he bought the spices for only a few copper coins, but the guild master mistakes his silence for dissatisfaction with the price. He raises his offer to 15 gold coins for everything, and Mukoda finally accepts, realizing he's discovered an infinite money glitch. After getting the gold coins, Mukoda heads for the Adventurers Guild and begins registering himself. The receptionist gives him the lowest G rank card before explaining that he needs to complete 1 quest per month if he wants to keep his membership. He nods and accepts an easy-looking quest to gather some medicinal flowers for the month. A few days later, Mukoda goes outside the inn and stretches his arms, ready to gather herbs herbs for the quest. Watching him get ready without a care, Fel reminds him that he wants breakfast before they go out. After breakfast, Mukoda goes out to his quest location with Fel, who complains that breakfast wasn't enough to fill him. Mukoda tells him to hunt for meat while he gathers herbs, but Fel doesn't leave before activating a magic shield to protect him from monsters while he's gone. With the legendary dog gone, Mukoda uses his appraisal skill and starts picking the first herb he needs. He soon completes the quest requirements and picks some extra herbs as ingredients for his cooking. Then, Mukoda begins preparing lunch while waiting for Fel to come back. As he takes out his cooking set and orders some ground beef and sauces, Fel returns with another rockbird, saying that he left more monsters in the forest. Mukoda nods and continues cooking his ground beef pasta. Once it's done, Fel feels suspicious of the dangly noodles, but immediately gulps them down after tasting how good they are. Mukoda then gives Fel some cheese to add on top, feeling happy that he can still enjoy all the treats from his old world in this life. After lunch, they head to the forest to get Fel's meat, and Mukoda feels shocked by all the crazy monsters he has hunted. He asks Fel if it's okay to eat half-human monsters like orcs, but Fel explains that it's completely normal for humans to eat them. Mukoda nods before putting all the beasts in his storage and gets on Fel's back, who takes him on a roller coaster ride back home. Once they get back, Mukoda heads into the Adventurers Guild and hands the herbs to the receptionist, who feels surprised that he got so many on his first quest. After he asks her where to sell monster meat, she gets surprised that a weak man like him can hunt, but Mukoda explains that it was actually his guard dog's work. The receptionist nods, then sends Mukoda to the butcher, who gets shocked by the amount of meat he has and takes him to the back of the building. There, the butcher tells Mukoda there are rumors about him and Fel, before Mukoda shocks him with all the powerful beasts he has. The butcher tells him it'll take a while to process all the monsters, so Fel asks for some quick orc meat for the day's dinner. With the orc meat in hand, Mukoda plates some soft pork picadas with delicious meat sauce. Fel quickly digs in, but Mukoda still feels disgusted at the thought of eating orc meat. However, he quickly changes his moral code and inhales the premium pork after getting a taste. The next day, Mukoda goes to the butcher to get his meat. The butcher shows him all the meat before giving him over 200 gold coins for the other monster materials. Mukoda feels surprised, but the butcher reminds him that high-ranked monsters are precious loot. The butcher then gives him a magic crystal from an rank beast, before asking about the rumors that his legendary Fenrir is just a high-ranked great wolf. The butcher then laughs it off, thinking that Fel is the legendary beast for sure with his confidence, and Mukoda leaves with a new excuse to hide his pet's identity. To keep them both safe, Mukoda leaves the town and rests at a midway point outside. There, he asks Fel if he wants to order some gourmet food online, and quickly starts buying the food as Fel creates a waterfall drooling over all the options. Once the food arrives, Fel quickly swallows it all, and Mukoda gives him a final cut of precious wagyu steak to enjoy. Fel thinks that the small meat is too pathetic, but realizes it tastes better than anything he's had before. Mukoda explains to him that wagyu cows are specially raised to taste the best, which surprises Fel. He tells Mukoda that in their world, nobody farms animals on a large scale since they just eat monster meat. Once Fel finishes dinner, he tells Mukoda that he's feeling strong enough to defeat the ancient dragon he once fought. Mukoda checks his stats and realizes that his food gave Fel a 50% buff, and Fel leaves to use his power for more hunting. Mukoda feels worried to be alone at night, but Fel confidently tells him that his barrier is enough before leaving. After he leaves, Mukoda takes out a soft futon mattress and goes to sleep. Meanwhile, Fel runs through the forest and turns a rockbird into chicken drumsticks. Then, he fries a deer alive and rips through an entire horde of orcs. Before the orc general approaches him, Fel remains confident while facing the bulky monster and slays him with a single strike. But then, a fearsome chimera monster challenges him to steal the prey. Refusing to take the insult, Fel roars and unleashes a lightning spell that obliterates the chimera and takes the monsters back to Mukoda in the morning. Seeing the mountains of meat and a casually decimated chimera around him, Mukoda decides that it's the last time he ordered wagyu for Fel. The next day, Mukoda asks Fel how he hunts monsters, and the murder puppy tells him that he uses a combination of claws and magic. Mukoda feels excited to use magic, so he checks his stats and finds out that he has magic talent. He asks Fel how to use it, but he just tells him to think about whatever spell he wants to use. Mukoda grabs his head in frustration, realizing that a genius beast like Fel, who goes by intuition, can't teach him anything about the basics. With Fel's words in mind, he imagines a powerful fireball launching out of his hand, but makes himself look like a kid trying to use a Kamehameha. Fel notices Mukoda's pathetic attempt and explains that he needs to let magical energy flow through his body first. He lets Mukoda feel his own body for the magic flow, and tells him to practice for the feel, which gets him pumped. However, he immediately gives up after his first real fireball dies out out like a cheap candle. Fel tells Mukoda to get some magic practice with real monsters, but he wimps out and refuses to go. So Fel just grabs the cowardly chef to dump into the battlefield. He tosses Mukoda into a camp of goblins and leaves to hunt meat, knowing that his wimpy master won't fight if he's around to babysit him. While running away from the goblins, Mukoda throws a fireball at them, which hits one, but they continue gaining distance on him. Suddenly, Mukoda trips on a stone, and one of the goblins jumps to attack him, but Fel's barrier protects him. Inside the barrier's protection, Mukoda starts lobbing more fireballs at the goblins, and his final attack actually defeats a couple. However, he collapses from exhaustion and passes out, but Fel finally comes up to take him away. Later at night, Mukoda wakes up in a cold sweat, but calms down after feeling safe. Fel praises him for his final fireball, but Mukoda starts crying because he threw him into such a dangerous place. Then, Fel notices that Mukoda leveled up. Before he gives him the body of the Goblin King, he asks Mukoda if the body has a magic stone he can sell for more wagyu meat, but the traumatized chef refuses to give him any more treats for the time being. Mukoda then gets up to prepare a normal dinner, but orders some bakery goods after falling down from exhaustion. Fel feels upset that he's not getting any meat, but he stops complaining after finding the bread delicious. After finishing his portion, Fel asks for more sweets, but Mukoda warns him that he'll get fat if he eats too much. However, the magic wolf confidently tells him that he's immune to poison and illnesses because he got a blessing from the goddess of wind, Ninrir. Mukoda feels jealous that Fel is so overpowered and starts praying to God to give him some buffs just like him. As his desperate screams ring out, a mysterious lady sits at a pond, smiling softly. The next day, Mukoda reaches another town, but the overgrown mutt behind him causes the people to panic. The border guards quickly surround Mukoda, but he explains to them that Fel is actually just his pet great wolf. Fel telepathically reminds Mukoda that he's not a great wolf, while the guards feel suspicious of him. After verifying his guild card, they tell Mukoda that he's allowed to enter their town, warning that if Fel causes trouble, Mukoda could get executed or sold into slavery as punishment. With this information in mind, Mukoda heads into the town and leaves Fel in a stable, while he goes out searching for a world map. He enters a library and gets interested in a magic book, but is surprised that books are expensive because paper is a rare material. Then, he asks the shopkeeper if he has a world map, and the old man gets angry that Mukoda thinks he has top secret FBI level information just lying around. Afterward, Mukoda decides to find a bigger library for his needs, but returns to his room after finding nothing. He goes back to Fel and orders some instant food for the hungry dog, which easily cheers it up. Afterward, Mukoda begins eating his own chicken and rice, but Fel, the legendary pig, starts drooling over that as well. The next day, as Mukoda explores the town, he bumps into some drunk adventurers near a pub. He enters the pub, feeling scared of all the tough adventurers around him, but talks to a party sitting together at a table. The party feels annoyed by Mukoda, but they all warm up to him after he treats them to some drinks. Mukoda asks the adventurers if they can tell him more about their world, revealing that he's from the kingdom of Rieseger. The adventurers nod, saying that the new Rieseger king has been constantly launching wars while trying to expand his territory. They tell Mukoda that the kingdoms of Ermin and Leonhardt are much more stable than their country, and have a bunch of dungeons for adventurers to explore. Mukoda thinks about all the loot he can get, but decides that staying alive is better than risking it for a few trinkets. He feels upset that he doesn't have a map of where to go, and the adventurers quietly tell him that they actually got a secret map. They show him a map with some locations plotted out, and tell Mukoda that he can have it since they have already memorized it. He thinks about their offer and decides that it's fair to pay a gold coin for such precious information. However, after Mukoda buys the map, the adventurers leave the pub and everyone else starts laughing at him. He asks them what's wrong, and they explain that he could have just gotten the public map from the Adventurers Guild for a silver coin instead of getting scammed by strangers. With this map in hand, Mukoda heads out with Fenrir towards the east, looking forward to the coastal areas. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Ninrir feels jealous that Mukoda easily lured her servant Fel with some food and stole him from her. Down on the earth, Fel takes Mukoda to a lake to eat some fish. He shocks the entire lake population into unconsciousness and tells Mukoda to take the fish he likes. Mukoda begins picking the trout, but when Fel tells him to grab some purple variants, he firmly refuses after realizing that they're poisonous. After collecting all the fish, Mukoda grabs some firewood with Fel and orders the ingredients for grilled trout. Once he has everything, Mukoda cleans up a couple of fish and puts them to grill on a skewer, while he preps Fel's special king trout. While preparing all the seasoning, Mukoda keeps reminding Fel to wait until the fish is properly grilled. Once all the different fish dishes are done, both master and servant dig into the food, instantly enjoying it. Mukoda then pulls out some beer to drink with the meat and goes ham on everything. While Mukoda eats, Fel complains that he has already finished finished, so he gets up to cook some more. Once they're both finally done eating, Fel asks Mukoda if he can cook more fish for him in the future, but he shakes it off and gets up to sleep. However, he runs into a little slime and wonders why the barrier didn't activate. Fel reminds Mukoda that the slime can't hurt him, and he sits down to pet the living jelly. Mukoda feels bad for the baby slime and wonders what to feed it since he's out of food. However, the slime just runs up to some garbage and dissolves it inside its body. Fel tells Mukoda that slimes can eat literally everything, so he rushes and stops the slime before it can devour his entire kitchen. After the slime cleans up all its plastic trash, Mukoda pats its head and it bounces with happiness. Mukoda wonders if the slime is intelligent as it jumps into his arms, confused by how friendly the monster is being with him. But Fel tells him that it has already become his familiar. Mukoda feels shocked that it became his familiar without even signing a contract. But Fel explains that since they both wanted to be together, they formed a partnership without a contract. Fel then asks Mukoda to name the baby slime, so he calls it Sui. The next day, Mukoda tries to create a stone missile, but only succeeds in lobbing a tiny pebble. Fel keeps laughing at his miserable failures, but Mukoda celebrates the fact that he can control another element. While Fel offers to get him some more practical experience, remembering his last disaster with the goblins, Mukoda firmly refuses, but Fel tells him he'll stay mediocre with his weak mindset. Afterward, Mukoda sits down to take a break, and Sui climbs onto his lap. He notices that Sui gained a lot of levels in just a day, and wonders if the plastic garbage from his other world is also a rare food source for the slime. Fel interrupts his thoughts by asking for more food, and Mukoda gets to cooking for everyone. He prepares a dish of marinated orc meat, which Fel starts devouring. Mukoda tells Sui to try eating the food instead of the bowl this time before enjoying his own portion. After they all finish eating, Mukoda feels happy that he's used to orc meat now. Before checking out Sui's stats, he learns that the little slime only gets temporary buffs from his food, and feels happy while watching it clean his dirty kitchenware for free. He then looks at Fel, the big freeloader, before deciding to celebrate Sui's first real meal by ordering some sweet buns with green tea. He asks Sui if it likes the sweet buns, and it immediately says yes. The next morning, Fel looks out at the sky while Sui wakes Mukoda up. Once he gets up, Fel tells him that he received a message from Ninrir. This news shocks him, but Fel explains that his master is willing to give Mukoda a wind blessing if he sends her some sweets from his world every week. Mukoda feels confused why a powerful being like Ninrir wants food, while Fel informs him that the minor blessing will protect him from status effects and enhance his magical talent. However, as Fel reminds him of the weekly gift, Mukoda wonders how to send it to Ninrir. Fel tells him that he can place the sweets anywhere, and Ninrir will take them if he offers them. Then, after he tells Mukoda to give Ninrir some sweet buns and bread, he wonders why Fel's master is demanding food like a toddler asking for candy. After getting all the sweets Ninrir wants, Mukoda offers them to her, and the items disappear into thin air. After the items disappear, a faint glow appears on Mukoda's body, and he feels happy at receiving the blessing. Meanwhile, Ninrir feels ecstatic as she enjoys the sweet buns, thinking she has truly found happiness. She feels sad after the bun quickly disappears into her belly, but some chocolate milk gets her excited again. Ninrir thinks about saving the rest of the precious sweets she has left, but her greed gets the best of her, and she finishes them all in one go. Back on Earth, Mukoda successfully uses his stone magic after getting Ninrir's blessing. After some training, he feels tired and heads over to his backpack to get some food. He grabs a chocolate bar and sits down with Sui, waiting for Fel to return after a task. Soon, he returns and senses that Mukoda ate something behind his back, so Fel starts throwing a hissy fit to get some chocolate of his own. As he orders some chocolate for Fel, Mukoda suddenly receives a message from Ninrir, who tries to act mysterious, but ends up begging him for the chocolate like a spoiled child. Mukoda finally realizes the reason Ninrir blessed him, and he gives her the chocolate before Fel pushes him to leave for their next location. On the way there, he asks Mukoda about his earth magic progress, and after learning that he's still at a beginner level, Fel decides to take him somewhere special. Soon, Mukoda finds himself at the entrance of a new dungeon and tries to sneak away. However, Fel drags him back, saying that he needs more experience to improve his magic. Mukoda starts crying that the dungeon is too dangerous for him, but Fel reassures him that it only has weak monsters. Mukoda says that the weak monsters are still a big deal for him, but Fel tells him that he can't continue progressing at a snail's pace and reminds him that his barrier will protect him anyway. However, he warns Mukoda that if he gets too deep in the dungeon, his barrier might not work, so he needs to be prepared to protect himself. Realizing there's no way out, Mukoda starts preparing for his dungeon crawl and orders a bunch of different food. He explains to Fel that his food gives different kinds of buffs and begins stuffing his face to prepare for the dungeon. Once Mukoda finishes, Fel thinks he's ready for the fight, but he still feels feels scared as he heads inside. Fel gets frustrated that he's already shaking like a leaf at the entrance, so he pushes him into the action. Suddenly, a slime pops out, and Mukoda feels guilty for attacking it while having Sui with him. However, Sui mercilessly spits acid and melts down the opposing slime with zero guilt. Then, Mukoda uses his earth bullet to take out another enemy slime and notices that the earth is swallowing up its body. Fel explains that a dungeon is actually like a living creature that absorbs everything that dies inside it, which makes Mukoda even more scared as they head deeper inside. Once they go down a floor, suddenly, some kobolds start chasing Mukoda, who turns around and hits them as they get too close to him. He thinks he has done a great job, but Fel tells him he's still too weak and takes him even deeper to get stronger. After arriving at the lower level, Mukoda gets shocked by an entire army of kobolds and tries to chicken out. Fel refuses to let him weasel out and tosses Mukoda right into the horde with Sui to help. As the angered kobolds charge at him, Mukoda screams like a girl and flinches pathetically, but Fel's barrier protects him while Sui snipes all the monsters. Mukoda finally calms down after realizing he's safe and starts spamming his stone bullet to delete the kobolds. After decimating the entire floor, he notices two final kobolds who turn around to escape, but a creature inside the cave knocks them back. As the kobold king steps out, Mukoda stands there helplessly, before doing what he does best, running away screaming like a little girl. Fel reminds him that he can't defeat the monster by running, so he tries to use his stone bullets, but the kobold king easily shrugs off his attacks. Mukoda tries using more bullets, but the monster just attacks him through them. Then, after Fel warns him that the king can destroy his barrier, Mukoda gets serious and launches a big bullet attack that finally knocks out the monster. However, the kobold king somehow gets back up, and Mukoda runs out of mana to defend himself. As he thinks he's going to turn into wolf poop, the kobold king's attack gets stopped in its tracks by Fel's barrier, who reveals he was just lying to make Mukoda fight seriously. While the monster remains distracted, Sui pops up and melts it into a puddle of goo, and Mukoda passes out from exhaustion as his slime starts glowing. Later, Mukoda wakes up outside the dungeon with Sui nearby. Mukoda asks Sui if it's okay, and he replies that he's fine. He feels relieved at Sui's answer, but feels shocked after realizing that it's actually talking to him. Sui explains that he was able to talk after defeating the kobold king, and Mukoda finds out that he evolved into an adult slime after the fight. He then checks out his own stats, only to get heartbroken that he's even weaker than a 2-week-old slime. Mukoda then asks Sui about Fel, and he tells him that he went outside for a task. As Mukoda wonders if Sui is a special slime who can talk, Fel returns with a bloodied snout and asks for some real food. Mukoda gets mad at him for lying about the barrier, but Fel reminds him that he wouldn't have gotten stronger otherwise, so he starts ordering ingredients. After Mukoda prepares an egg-simmered rockbird gravy with rice, they all enjoy their lunch and sit down to relax. He asks Fel if he has already talked with Sui, and Sui confirms that Fel is a good uncle. The Grand Fenrir Fel gets offended and screams at Sui to use his normal name, which makes him cry. Mukoda comforts Sui in his arms and emotionally blackmails Fel, who gives up his dignity and finally allows Sui to call him uncle. While Fel tries not to cry from shame, Mukoda keeps cuddling his slime companion, feeling happy with his growing party. The next day, as they run through a forest, Fel tells Mukoda that they're going through boss-level Orthos and Griffin territories. Mukoda feels terrified, but Fel reminds him that those monsters can't touch him, but his pathetic master still tries to turn back and escape. However, Fel refuses to budge and tells him they're already inside Orthos territory. Once they head deeper, Fel suddenly stops, and soon, a bunch of brave and stupid Orthos jump out to fight. Mukoda quickly hides in a bush with Sui, while Fel reminds the young monsters how dumb their decision to fight is. The first Orthos rushes to attack Fel, but he takes it out without even touching its body. Finally, the other hooligans realize they're fighting a demon and run back into the forest. Fel calls Mukoda to come out, who asks him how he attacked the Orthos without even touching it. Fel proudly explains that he can use magic to claw at enemies even from a distance, and Sui asks Mukoda if he can use this skill too. He reminds him that he doesn't have claws like Fel, but starts praising Sui for having an even better acid spray, while Fel watches unamused that the slime stole his glory. Later at night, as Mukoda gathers some water in a bucket, he gets startled by a sound. Fel tells him that he's acting scared with no reason, since the Orthos won't appear to harass them again. He then asks Mukoda for dinner, who gets ready to start cooking, but feels horrified remembering that it'll still take them 3 weeks to get out of these wretched forests. Mukoda then takes out some black serpent meat and starts making a sweet and spicy sauce for it. Once Mukoda's done preparing the meat, he forces himself to eat it, thinking it's chicken, but Fel steals it all for himself. Left with nothing for himself, Mukoda cooks up another batch for his hungry dog and slime, but after they both finish, all he gets for himself is a small serving left left for a sandwich. The next day, Fel is running through the forest, but stops after seeing some rare healing mushrooms, explaining that they can even heal broken bones. Mukoda gets off to pick all the mushrooms and lets Sui eat some of them. As he finishes filling up a full basket, Mukoda feels shocked when Sui starts glowing. He quickly checks on his baby, but Sui tells him he's fine, so Mukoda checks his stats with appraisal. He learns about Sui's new potion creation skill, and Fel tells him that slimes can get the properties of the magic materials they eat. Mukoda feels excited to see the healing potion factory in action, and Sui tries his best to create his first potion. As some liquid starts dripping out from Sui's arm, Mukoda rushes to collect it in a bottle and feels surprised that it's a high-quality potion that can heal near-death injuries. He asks Sui if he can make lower-quality potions as well, and Sui confirms that he can also make low and medium-quality potions for smaller injuries. Seeing the healing potion created so easily, Fel feels surprised by Sui's unique skill and praises him for his intelligence. Sui feels happy with all the attention he's getting and jumps into Mukoda's hands, who pampers him even more. A few days later, Mukoda and Fel stop in the griffin territory. As the first griffin appears, Mukoda gets ready for another fight, but the monster asks to have a duel with Fel to prove its strength to its people. Fel agrees and warns the griffin that he won't hold back, but Mukoda telepathically tells him not to take the monster's life. With both of them ready, Fel charges at the griffin, which flies up and shoots a storm of feather arrows at him. Fel avoids the arrows, but loses sight of the griffin in the dust, so the bird uses this to launch a surprise attack. Mukoda feels lost since the fighting is happening in the dust, but Fel finally uses a tornado spell to sweep up the griffin. As the tornado disappears, the griffin falls from the sky, and Mukoda gets angry at Fel for going too far. However, the griffin feels proud that it fought a serious match against the legendary Fenrir before closing its eyes. Mukoda quickly calls over Sui and uses a powerful healing potion on the griffin, which gets up, feeling embarrassed that it lost so easily. However, Mukoda shows that it actually got Fel with a slight injury, and Fel awkwardly admits that he did get hurt. At this news, the griffin gets excited and roars to call all its tribe, who fly over to their location. The griffin heads to the lead spot and thanks Fel for helping him get recognized as a leader of his pack. He gives Mukoda a feather to keep so he can safely pass through the griffin territory in the future, before flying away with its tribe. Afterward, Fel demands a big dinner because he used so much strength, so Mukoda decides to treat him with all the meat they have left. He preps some orc meat with egg batter and fries it in oil, and serves the finished dish to his party. Then, Mukoda sits down for his own meal and tries to forget that he's about to eat a half-human. Meanwhile, Fel and Sui finish their portions and ask for seconds, but then Fel reminds Mukoda to give his sweet gifts to Ninrir. Mukoda feels anxious that he totally forgot, and orders some more sweets before Ninrir gets upset and turns his wind blessing into a curse. The next morning, Fel finally makes it out of the forest with Mukoda, who feels excited to enter the kingdom of Leonhardt. He tells Fel that they're running out of meat, and the oversized meat processor starts running anxiously to hunt more monsters as soon as possible. However, they encounter a caravan getting attacked by some bandits, so Mukoda asks Fel to save them in exchange for a special dinner. Up ahead, the bandits quickly overpower the caravan guards, but Fel arrives at the scene and roars to intimidate them before ordering the bandits to leave. Facing the legendary beast, the bandits drop their weapons and get arrested. While the caravan leader Lambert thanks Mukoda for his help, Mukoda asks him where he was headed, and after learning that they're going to a Leonhardt city called Kerlina, he asks to tag along with them. Once they all start walking towards the city, Mukoda hears the guards whisper about his Fenrir and learns that they use a magic messaging ability to communicate between cities. Mukoda sighs, hoping that he remains safe from all the greedy monsters after his precious dog. After a little while, the caravan stops to rest, and Fel reminds Mukoda that he promised him a feast. Mukoda thinks about what to cook since he doesn't have much meat, so he decides to make some perfect nuggets with all the remaining chunks. As Mukoda's party indulges itself, the adventurers smell their amazing food and walks over to check it out. Noticing their pitiful stares, Mukoda gives the beggars some food as well, and he quickly runs out of all his meat before getting to eat even a single piece. As thanks for the good food, the adventurers offer to guard their group while Mukoda's party sleeps, and he happily accepts their offer. Nearby, the bandits get angry at the guards for being detained, but Mukoda reminds them that Fel will turn them into beef jerky if they try anything funny. The next day, the caravan reaches the city of Kerlina, where they hand over the bandits to the police. The caravan guards then decide to head over to the Adventurers Guild, and Mukoda goes with them as Lambert heads back to his shop. However, when Mukoda actually visits the guild, he learns that his license was revoked because he was inactive for over a month. As the receptionist explains that he needs to keep doing quests to retain his membership, Mukoda gives her his tag to re-register and tells her to register Monster Sui as his familiar. She gets weirded out by the slime, and everyone else starts laughing at Mukoda. After getting registered, he heads to the shop to sell his meat, and the adventurers ask if they can look at the rare monsters Fel hunted. Soon, they stare at the mountain of dangerous beasts stacked up like a pile of trash, and quickly accept that Fel really is a real Fenrir. Meanwhile, the butcher feels excited to work on such high-quality materials. Out of curiosity, Mukoda asks him if he can butcher his meat elsewhere, and learns that other butchers can cheat him or carelessly ruin the monster loot. As the butcher gets to work, Mukoda feels excited to try more exotic meat, while the adventurers realize that they just ate literal gold from him last night. They all apologize for eating Mukoda's precious meat, but he tells them that he doesn't mind at all. As thanks, Captain Lars tells Mukoda to ask him for any help since he's a well-known guy in the city. Afterward, Mukoda heads to an inn to sleep, but feels bad that he has to keep doing quests to sell his meat at the guild. As he closes his eyes to rest, Ninrir starts telepathically crying that he hasn't given her any attention after coming to the city. So Mukoda gets up to give her a gift. He orders some extra special stuff this time, and Ninrir accepts them like an excited child, making him doubt her goddess status before he goes to sleep. The next morning, Mukoda looks at a guild billboard for some quests, and Fel tells him to hunt some goblins to increase his rank quickly. Mukoda reminds him that he still has PTSD from his last goblin encounter, and asks Fel why he's in such a rush to rank up and visit the ocean. Fel shamelessly tells him that he just wants good seafood, and Mukoda feels terrified of all the krakens and serpents lurking in the ocean. However, Fel insists that they go because he loved the fish they ate last time, and tries to get Sui to support him. Mukoda tries to convince Sui not to go, but it says that it wants to melt more monsters, forcing him to accept his party's decision. Once they head out to hunt, Sui spots a group of 3 goblins and turns them into fertilizer. Mukoda feels disgusted while cutting off goblin ears for proof, but then another bunch of them appear from behind. Sui sprays them with acid again and melts through the entire pack like butter. While Mukoda's knees tremble with fear, Sui asks him if he can fight more goblins, so Fel drags him away before he can refuse. Soon, the slime machine gun finishes, wiping out the local goblin population, and Fel makes Mukoda collect all their ears to get more adventurer points. Mukoda feels worried that the mountain of goblin corpses might attract beasts to the city or create another dungeon, and asks Fel to clean them all. He suggests burning the bodies, but Mukoda refuses to risk setting the entire forest on fire, so Fel then asks Sui to melt them all. Sui asks for Mukoda's permission before enlarging into a giant form, and Mukoda checks his stats and learns that he got another skill. Sui explains that he can now change his size at will, before melting his big form away and creating dozens of new slimes, which get to work and eat up all the goblins. Mukoda asks Fel if this is normal, but even the old Fenrir feels surprised by Sui's mysterious powers. After the slimes finish cleaning up, Mukoda realizes that Sui's powers might be even more valuable than his own grocery skill. Afterward, Mukoda orders some bread while they rest, and he wonders if it's okay to finish ranking up in just one day instead of the whole month. Once he gets back to the guild, Mukoda feels trapped as the guild members panic over his mountains of goblin ears. The receptionist calls him over to meet her guild master with his party, and Mukoda gets ready for another stressful meeting. After Mukoda enters the guild master's room, the leader, Willem, asks him about the goblins. Mukoda tells him that he encountered a big tribe of them, and Willem explains that the city was having trouble with all the goblins that had popped up, so he'll reward Mukoda for taking care of them all. Mukoda feels relieved that he's not getting investigated, while the guild master praises Fenrir's power for defeating the goblins. However, Sui reminds Willem that he did all the hard work, and the guild master feels surprised that Mukoda has another unique friend. Then, he tells Mukoda that the royal family has allowed him to live freely in their kingdom, but asks for Fel's help if they face an emergency. While Mukoda celebrates his freedom, Willem asks him about his adventurer rank promotions. He tells him that he wants to become F rank, but Willem offers to raise him directly to C rank if he can do some tasks for him. Mukoda realizes that a guild master must have some serious missions and tries to refuse, but Willem explains that Fel can complete these difficult requests on his own. As Fel agrees, Willem takes out some high-ranking quests, feeling excited to have some of the town's old problems solved. Mukoda then asks Willem to sell some rare beasts, but he tells him that he doesn't have enough money to purchase the precious Chimera and Orthos. Disappointed, Mukoda stores away the 2 terrors while the butcher works on the other special monsters. Learning that they're all S-ranked monsters, Mukoda feels a bit scared of his own pet Fel, and Sui says that it wants to become just like its uncle. As Mukoda prepares to head home, Willem tells him to get his C rank card the next day. Once he gets back, Mukoda starts prepping some rockbird for dinner and peels the meat into smaller strips with Sui. After preparing the meat, Mukoda adds his veggies and seasonings and begins begins enjoying the meal with his friends. After dinner, Fel tries resting in his stable, but feels suffocated. So Mukoda gives him a mattress to lie on before leaving to sleep. The next morning, Mukoda gets his guild card from Willem and learns that he only needs to do a quest every 6 months from now on. Then, Willem shows him a huge pile of cash and explains that all the rare monsters he hunted sold for almost 2,000 gold coins. Mukoda feels happy to be rich, but then realizes he's become a prime target for bandits. After making the payment, Willem gives Mukoda his special quests to hunt a metal lizard and a pack of red-horned bulls, saying that they need the lizard taken care of first. Mukoda remembers that Fel has already hunted a metal lizard, realizing that he underestimated how dangerous these beasts were because Fel plucked them like weeds. Then, Willem explains that the red-horned bulls have started a colony near adventurer training grounds, and Fel feels excited to try their delicious beef. Mukoda also starts getting dirty thoughts about all the nasty things he could do to the bull's tender meat, and Willem feels creeped out by his disturbing expression. Afterward, Mukoda heads to Lambert's shop to buy a new carry bag for Sui. In that moment, Sui jumps into a bag he likes. Then, he also buys an expensive knife belt and purse, and grabs some leather shoes to replace his old ones. Lambert calculates the final price, but tells Mukoda that he can have the items for free since he saved his life. Then, he asks him if he has some expensive black serpent skin left, but Mukoda guiltily explains that he already sold it all to the guild. Lambert sighs, recalling the beautiful red serpent skin the guild recently bought, and Mukoda refrains from telling him that he was the one who sold it, too. As Mukoda later prepares to leave, Lambert asks him to sell any serpent skins to him in the future, and he accepts his request. Fel joins Mukoda as he walks back to the inn and demands to eat some more nuggets with Sui before they go lizard hunting. Once they get back, Mukoda gets to cooking and douses the meat in sauce before preparing to double fry it. After the first batch gets done, Mukoda's 2 pets quickly finish it and ask for more, and he happily prepares more servings. Once he's done feeding his pets, Mukoda sits down to have some food for himself and enjoys the full moon in the sky while having his feast. The next day, Fel reaches the metal lizard's location and asks Mukoda to check on his map. Once he gets confirmation, Fel starts running to sniff out the lizard's nest, and soon finds a cave near a forest. Mukoda asks him if he can stay outside while he goes in to hunt, but Fel just takes him inside anyway. Deep within the cave, Fel spots the metal lizard chomping away at some metal. Mukoda notices that the lizard is glowing for some reason and finds out that it's actually evolved to get a mithril skin. Fel explains that since the lizard has mithril armor, magic attacks will be less effective against it. Mukoda thinks that this will cause trouble for Fel, but the overpowered wolf just fries the lizard with a powerful lightning spell. Mukoda pays his respects to the fallen soul and stores it in his bag, and decides to pick some mithril ore while he's in the cave. He thinks about creating some magic armor with the material, but Fel gets angry and reminds him that his barrier is far stronger than some metal. Then, he grabs Mukoda and sprints off, ready to go hunt the bull colony for delicious beef. Once they reach the area, Mukoda decides to sit it out and let Fel hunt the monsters. Fel agrees and leaves him behind, but Sui pops out of its bag, leaving his master all alone. Mukoda takes a peek at the scene, but before he can even react, a huge wind blows out, clearing to reveal the bull corpses whose souls ascended to heaven. Sui comes back to Mukoda to proudly reveal that he cleaned up the monsters, while Mukoda wonders if he can even fit so much meat in his bag. As he struggles to shove the cows into his storage space, Sui creates his dozen clones and helps him move the bodies. Once the meat is stored away, Mukoda starts preparing some orc and rockbird sandwiches for lunch. As they start eating, Sui gets curious about the soda Mukoda is drinking. He gives some of it to Sui, and it instantly empties the whole bowl, while Fel comes over to check it out. After enjoying an entire bottle, the big wolf sits down to rest and starts burping like an old engine. Later, Mukoda returns with the mithril lizard to the guild, and Willem tells him that this discovery is so serious, he'll have to report it to the king. The butcher explains that metal lizards are rare creatures, but in order for one to evolve into a mithril lizard, it must have found a new mithril ore vein. He reveals that mithril ore can only be mined at 3 locations in the world, so they have just discovered a new gold mine. Willem tells Mukoda that he'll sell the lizard to the king along with the mountain's location, but he'll get him a good reward for it, learning that he'll get 5,000 gold coins as compensation. Mukoda starts feeling scared of his own money, while the butcher feels jealous that he's suffering from success. However, Willem asks Mukoda for some time to prepare the big payment and tells him to take care of the red bulls in the meantime. Before he can even finish speaking, Mukoda unloads the entire herd into the room, leaving the guild master truly speechless. Afterward, Mukoda feels worried that he'll get into trouble for his secret discovery, but Fel impatiently asks him for dinner. The thought of premium beef cheers Mukoda up, and he gets ready to prepare them some good steaks. He cuts up the meat into big portions portions and prepares his pan for grilling. Once the pan is ready, Mukoda adds the spices and cooks up the meat before wrapping it up in foil to set. Fel and Sui feel excited as they wait, and when the steak is finally ready, they all ascend to heaven from the exquisite flavor. After finishing his portion, Fel asks Mukoda for his special treat, so he drizzles some garlic sauce all over his next serving. Later, the two beasts rest while Mukoda cleans the dishes, and Fel tells him that he can't go back to raw meat after getting hooked on his cooking. As Sui also praises his master, Mukoda feels happy to have these companions and feels determined to continue treating them with delicious cuisine. After finishing the dishes, Mukoda heads to his room to give Ninrir her gifts before going to sleep. He orders some sweets from his store, but Ninrir complains that she wants even more. She feels excited after Mukoda orders some deluxe cakes and puddings for her, but suddenly, some other goddesses interrupt her and greet him on the call. The other three girls get angry at Ninmir for hogging all the good stuff, but she claims that she's just getting compensation for giving him a blessing. The biggest of the three, the goddess of earth Kisharl, tells Mukoda that a blessing can only enhance his power if he uses the corresponding element magic. Along with her, the goddess of fire Agni offers to boost his fire magic as well, and Mukoda feels stuffed under all of their offers. Ninrir tries to protect him from the others by reminding them that they've been giving out too many major blessings already. However, the two just settle for giving him minor blessings, and Mukoda feels like he can't refuse them even if he wanted to. Mukoda asks them if it's normal for one person to gain the blessings of multiple goddesses, and they realize nobody else in history got it. However, Agni doesn't care, and she blesses Mukoda without his consent, and Kisharl does the same. Ninrir feels upset that she has to share her human bakery, but the third goddess quietly asks her if she's not going to get anything. Ninrir and the others grow quiet after she speaks, and she introduces herself as Rusalka, the goddess of water. Rusalka feels upset that she can't get Mukoda's sweets because he doesn't have any water magic and starts crying. Everyone panics to calm her down, and the girls tell Mukoda he should help. While he feels confused about what to do, Sui asks him if he can help. This gives Mukoda the idea to have Sui blessed by Rusalka, and she agrees to give him a major water blessing. Once all the girls calm down, Mukoda sends all of them a big box of treats as a gift. Before lying down to check his stats, he decides to keep his blessings a secret, while Sui feels confused, so Mukoda tells him to test out the blessings the next morning. The next day, Mukoda uses his fireball and stone bullet spells, feeling happy to see them much stronger than before. Then, Sui creates a big ball of water and completely obliterates a giant tree with it, before slicing down another two. Mukoda feels scared of Sui's power and warns it never to use its powers on people. While Mukoda goes back to training with his new power, Fel goes out to hunt some more beasts. When he later returns, Fel sees that Mukoda built a new house for them to sleep in with some earth magic. However, he puts down a black serpent, demanding dinner before they can go in to rest. The next day, Fel asks Mukoda if he wants to hunt some more meat. He refuses, saying that they should sell the serpent skin to Lambert while they collect the previous meat from the Adventurers Guild. Once they go back to town, the butcher hands over the finished bull meat along with the money, saying that it will still take them some time to process the mithril lizard. Mukoda nods and gives him the black serpent to process the meat and skin. Before returning to make lunch, he takes out a meat grinder to make some mincemeat, and Sui helps him crank the manual machine to finish the work in seconds. Once the meat is ready, Mukoda sautés some onions and prepares the meat in an egg and bread batter. Then, he turns the beef into patties and puts them on a grill, and the group soon stuffs their faces with some good food. Once they're done eating, Mukoda tries washing himself, but realizes that the inn's soap is useless. He decides to order some premium soaps and shampoos from his online mart to use and sell to Lambert. Once the soap arrives, he visits Lambert's shop and starts by selling the serpent skin, before asking him if he can sell his soaps as a merchant. Lambert looks at the soap and admires it for its high quality. But when Mukoda introduces the rest of the magical hair and skin products as well, he starts thinking that God sent him a miracle from heaven. Lambert explains to Mukoda that his wedding anniversary is next week, so he got the perfect gift to give his wife, who is tired of all his bags and purses. As Mukoda learns that Lambert's wife loves taking baths, he starts wanting a bathtub for himself and asks him if he sells any. Lambert shows him a luxurious tub, but explains that because bathtubs are so expensive to make, he'll need a few hundred gold coins to pay a specialized tub shop. With all the money from monster loot, Mukoda decides it's worth it to pay so much, and Lambert offers to introduce him to a tub maker before he leaves. The next day, Mukoda goes back to Lambert to check on him and meets his enthusiastic wife at the door. She introduces herself as Mary before explaining that because of Mukoda's shampoos, her husband actually looked like he had taken a shower for the first time in years. She then praises Mukoda for his magical conditioners that fixed her dry hair, and Lambert asks him if he can sell his soaps in his store. Lambert says that he's a bit skeptical about selling soaps as a leather merchant, but his wife tells him that the rare soaps will be an instant success. She asks Mukoda to sell his goods to Lambert's store, and he quickly accepts, saying he doesn't know other merchants anyway. After finishing his goods delivery, Mukoda heads back to Fel and Sui, and Fel asks him if they can go hunting again. However, Mukoda refuses, explaining that the guild master arrived in town to see him before leaving the bored wolf to rot alone. Inside the guild, Mukoda enters the guild master's room and immediately screams in shock at the mountains of gold piled up. With the 6,000 gold coins in hand, Mukoda thinks he's going to get the best bathtub of all time, but a guild secretary interrupts to inform Willem that some adventurers got critically wounded by wyverns. As they rush down to check, the secretary explains that the party was attacked on the city outskirts. Once they reach the ground floor, they see the wounded adventurers, and Willem asks the surrounding people for healing potions. Mukoda quickly gives him some of Sui's potions, and they instantly restore the adventurer's health like senzu beans. Mukoda tries to act innocent as Willem feels suspicious of his medicine, but he orders his staff to take the adventurers to a doctor. Then, after Willem announces an emergency quest to hunt down the rogue wyverns, Mukoda realizes that he also has to participate as a C rank before anyone can leave the guild, though Fel arrives and declares that he'll take care of all the monsters himself. Mukoda tries to stop him, but Fel feels too bored to sit around and decides that he wants to eat wyvern meat for lunch. Seeing Fel ready to fight, Willem offers to help, but he tells him that he'll just get in his way. With the city's fate in Fel's hands, Mukoda is left helpless to head out with him. Once they reach the wyvern area, Fel stops to look at the flying beasts and says that he'll teach Sui how to hunt the birds. As the wyverns swoop down to attack, Fel takes Sui on his back and rushes towards them, and tells him to aim for their heads and necks to take them down. Sui takes a shot and hits a wyvern, but misses its head. The injured creature falls down screaming in pain, and Fel removes his head like a plastic puzzle piece. With his guns warmed up, Sui starts launching artillery missiles at the flying beasts, while Mukoda hides behind a rock like a complete wimp, watching the two of them rip the wyvern flock apart. Mukoda feels heartbroken that his cute Sui is getting corrupted by the violent Fel. Suddenly, a wyvern sneaks up behind him, and he screams like a little boy. When it strikes him with its tail, Fel's barrier activates and blocks the attack. However, Sui and Fel arrive just in time to turn the wyvern into a headless chicken. After they finish off the flock, Fel and Sui ask for lunch, and Mukoda pulls out some leftover beef patties. He coats them in some egg batter and fries them up before enjoying the delicious meat with his cold-blooded friends, while Mukoda enjoys an outdoor barbecue. The guild secretary feels worried that he'd get hurt by the monsters. However, Willem remains confident that he'll return just fine with the murder puppy Fel by his side. It takes a while for Mukoda's group to return, so the guild members get worried, but he finally returns at night. Willem anxiously asks him how the mission went, and Mukoda informs him that they exterminated all the wyverns in the sky. Soon, the entire guild erupts into cheers, and Willem explains that the wyverns had been terrorizing them all for quite a while. He tells Mukoda that the guild thought they were taking too long because they got hurt, while he feels guilty that he was just stuffing his face with burgers as they waited. However, Fel just tells Willem they were eating the wyverns, exposing their secret with zero shame. Mukoda later tells Willem that he preserved the wyverns' bodies by chopping their heads off, leaving him shocked that they can carefully handle such dangerous beasts. Willem tells him that he can butcher the meat for free, but only has enough money to pay for half of the monsters. But Mukoda doesn't mind. Once he hands over the meat, he returns to the inn to rest and remembers to send sweets to the goddesses who blessed him. Just then, he gets a message from Agni complaining about her sweets, but Ninrir secretly tells him to give her a bigger share of sweets. As Mukoda feels more frustrated, Kisharl also secretly asks him for hair care products, while Ruzalka requests some meat. Mukoda reminds all three of them that the others will find out about their secret messages when he sends the gifts anyway. As the three feel embarrassed, Agni gets furious that they contacted him privately, while Mukoda wishes he could end it all. The next day, Mukoda walks with Fel to the bathtub store. As he enters the large building, he instantly gets charmed by all the luxurious baths around him. While the shopkeeper shows him around all the different goods, Mukoda settles for a plain green tub and asks him to get it ready. The shopkeeper feels surprised that he has already decided and asks if he has a monthly payment plan for the hundreds of gold coins. Mukoda realizes that he doesn't look like he can afford such a huge amount up front and gives the owner a huge bag of gold. The shopkeeper asks him if he needs a delivery service for the tub, but Mukoda just uses his storage space and happily leaves the store with Fel. As they walk through the city, Mukoda asks Fel to leave the town since everyone started treating them differently after the wyvern hunt. He goes out to a nice forest to start setting up the tub, while Fel leaves to go hunt. After Fel leaves, Mukoda creates creates a stone wall for privacy and puts the tub inside, while Sui fills it up with water. Then, he warms up the water with his fireball before adding some special bath salts to it. Mukoda finally jumps into the cozy tub and washes off the months of dirt and grime on him, and finishes off the bath with a bottle of milk. After getting out of the bath, Mukoda starts preparing the wyvern meat for lunch. He chops some onions, slices the meat, and then prepares a sauce to soak it in. Once the meat is cooked, he pours the gravy on some rice and finishes the dish with some garnish. However, since Fel still hasn't returned, he decides to make some more food while he waits. Mukoda orders some veggies and bottles and prepares the rest of the meat in a nice stew. As he waits for the food to cook, Sui calls out that Fel has arrived, but Mukoda gets jump scared by a dinosaur corpse. Fel proudly tells him that because he wasn't satisfied with just some wyverns, he decided to hunt an earth dragon as well. Mukoda tries to ignore his insane feat, but starts screaming in panic anyway, and Fel wonders why he's so scared. Mukoda asks him what he's supposed to do with a real dragon, reminding him that it's so rare nobody will even buy it from him. Fel asks him if he can just get the meat from the dragon before noticing the aroma of the delicious wyvern food before Fel can eat, though Mukoda tells him that he's dirty from the fight and orders him to take a bath. Fel starts coping that he always keeps himself clean, but Mukoda refuses to let him eat before cleaning up. To help him bathe, Mukoda orders some dog shampoo from his store. Fel feels offended that he's getting treated like a pet, but Mukoda starts grooming him like a dog anyway. Once he brushes Fel's fur, he splashes him with water, and Fel feels annoyed by the little splashes. He asks Mukoda to just use Sui's water, but he explains that Sui can't make warm water for a bath. However, as he watches Sui play in the water, Mukoda gets the idea to mold his slimy body into water pipes. With the water pipe, he gives the embarrassed Fel a full dog wash. After the bath, Mukoda starts rubbing Fel's fur with a shampoo, and he starts to enjoy the special treatment. Mukoda tells Fel that he has to clean his face too, and he reluctantly accepts it to look like the best doggy ever. Once the bath is over, Fel shakes his fur dry and gives Mukoda a second bath. Mukoda then uses his fire and wind magic to dry both of them up, and Fel starts feeling proud of looking so handsome. However, even while gloating, Fel asks about dinner, so Mukoda takes out the wyvern dish he prepared. He pours out the gravy onto rice bowls, which makes Fel suspicious, but he forgets it and starts chomping down after tasting how good it is. Seeing Fel enjoy himself, Mukoda starts eating his own portion, but Fel asks him about the other pot he's cooking. Mukoda explains that the other pot needs some time to taste best, and they head back to town after finishing dinner. Once they get back, Mukoda tries selling the dragon to the guild, but Willem immediately refuses, saying they can't even afford a single claw from the legendary beast. Fel asks him to just butcher the meat, but Mukoda reminds him that they can't just ignore the other parts. Willem stops to think and tells him that the guild master from Dolan City might be able to process the dragon for him. After learning that Dolan is near the sea, Fel gets excited to enjoy all the ocean monsters, and Mukoda thinks he can get the dragon processed on their way there. The two guild members laugh at how casually he's taking a dragon beast, and send Mukoda on his way. Before leaving Corlina, Mukoda greets all his friends, and Willem gives him a map for his journey. With all his preparations done, Mukoda's party heads out to explore new horizons. Sometime later, in a dense forest, some ferocious giant spiders surround an unsuspecting little rabbit. As they get closer, one of the spiders lunges to snatch the rabbit for lunch, but a majestic Fel saves the day. After electrocuting the entire spider colony, Fel asks Mukoda if there are any furry-legged monsters left. Mukoda confirms that all the spiders are gone, but wonders what to do with their hairy corpses. Seeing him upset, Fel reveals that the inner parts of the spiders are actually very delicious. Meanwhile, the baby slime Sui pops out of Mukoda's bag, upset that Fel erased the spiders before it could have some fun with them. As Mukoda starts comforting his baby, Fel gets jealous and points out that he's always doting on Sui. Offended, Mukoda reminds the overgrown husky that he also begs him for treats like a whiny dog. At the mention of snacks, Fel gets excited and shamelessly asks Mukoda to make some more for him. Mukoda is tired of his antics, but he's got no choice but to satisfy his living meat processor. Before cooking, Mukoda puts away all of the spider corpses into his bottomless storage. Once the spiders are stored, he takes out all of the meat he has. Seeing that he doesn't have too many portions of the same meat, Mukoda decides to make a dish called gyoza. Both Fel and Sui are interested in the dish, but Mukoda says that it'll be a surprise. As Sui bounces around in excitement, Mukoda opens up his online grocery store to order some spices. Seeing the store, Fel asks for some premium wagyu, but Mukoda reminds him that he's only getting spices for their current dish. After ordering all the ingredients, Mukoda chops up the veggies and adds the sauce and spices to the meat. Once the sauces are in, he puts in the veggies and starts mixing them around with the meat. Finally, he makes some dumpling wraps with all the meat filling and hands them to Sui to prepare. Together, the master slime duo uses up the entire filling pot to fill 2 dishes with their dumplings. Mukoda takes the dumplings and starts cooking them on medium heat before adding the final bits of flour, salt, and sauce. Once it's done cooking, he flips the pan upside down and reveals the thoroughly seasoned gyoza dumplings. Mukoda proudly sets down the dish and begins explaining his cooking process, but Fel starts devouring it before he can finish a sentence. After just one bite, Fel turns from a savage animal into a master food critic, praising all its intricate flavors and textures. While Fel chomps away, Sui keeps dissolving all the dumplings in its slimy acid. Both monsters finish a batch in less than a minute, so Mukoda starts cooking up another batch. However, none of them notice as a tiny dragon watches their special dinner from a tree. Once the 2 monsters are done stuffing their mouths, Mukoda finally gets some time to relax and eat his own meal. He eats the gyoza from a small plate, enjoying the scraps his hungry companions leave for him. Unfortunately, Mukoda gets interrupted by a tiny dragon latching onto his face. Seeing the magic lizard innocently staring at his face, Mukoda takes some time to process his feelings before screaming out in horror. He asks Fel about the creature, and Fel reveals that it's a very rare pixie dragon. Mukoda is surprised that he actually encountered a mythical creature, and wonders if the flying lizard wants some of his food. As he moves his chopsticks around, the dragon follows the food, so Mukoda gives it a dumpling to eat. The little creature hugs the entire dumpling with its tiny body and takes a bite, instantly falling in love with the delicious cooking. Soon, the dragon finishes the whole dumpling and begs Mukoda for more. He quickly gives the rest of his own food to eat, which the dragon happily rushes to. As Mukoda thinks the dragon is pretty cute, Fel warns him not to be fooled by its tiny body because it can use any type of magic and annihilate most of its enemies in battle. Nearby, the dragon finishes its remaining meal and suddenly clings to Mukoda's face again. The dragon's body quickly glows before Mukoda yanks it off his face. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head demanding more delicious food, which leaves Mukoda confused. Fel tells him that the pixie dragon has decided to join their party and become his familiar, allowing it to communicate with everyone via telepathy. Mukoda's jaw drops as he realizes he's gonna go bankrupt with another mouth to feed, while Sui is excited to get another friend. Taking a look at Sui, the pixie dragon praises it for its surprising power. Before they can get too chummy, Mukoda stops them, pointing out that he didn't even consent to accepting the dragon as his familiar. He asks the pixie dragon if it really thinks it's worth following him around just for some food, but the tiny dragon thinks it's totally worth it. Fel quickly accepts it into the team, saying that a few decades of helping a puny human is nothing to ancient beasts like them. As the dragon agrees with Fel, Mukoda is stunned that all of the pretentious legendary beasts in this world are just a bunch of shameless gluttons. Then, the dragon reminds Mukoda that it needs a name as his new partner, so he calls it Dora-chan. After hearing his new name, Dora starts complaining that a powerful creature like him shouldn't have such a cute name, but Mukoda refuses to change his mind. As he checks Dora's stats, Mukoda points out that the system has already accepted his name, so he can't change it. In that moment, he also realizes that Dora is 116 years old. Remembering how Mukoda tried to give him some fluffy dog names when they first met, Fel tells Dora to just accept his fate. Meanwhile, Sui happily tells the group that he loves his name, and Mukoda thinks his 3 misfits will get along just fine. A few days later, Mukoda's party enters the city of Krail. As he registers Dora as his new familiar at the Adventurers Guild, the attendant informs him that the guild master has a special request. While Mukoda wonders why his help is needed, the guild master, called Rodolfo, appears and starts rambling about his pixie dragon. Seeing Mukoda's confusion, Rodolfo explains that he has a forest exploration quest for him. In a private room, Rodolfo reveals that the forest monsters are acting unusually aggressively, so Mukoda suggests that they just avoid the forests for now. This angers the dwarven leader, who points out that their town depends on the silk obtained from the forest monsters to make their textiles. Mukoda understands that the town is in a tough spot, but he feels too scared to fight dangerous monsters. However, Dora tells him that the forest is just filled with pitiful spiders and centipedes, which reminds Mukoda of his recent experience. Meanwhile, Rodolfo is confused since he can't hear telepathic conversation between the 2 partners. Fel also confirms that he took out all the spiders, so Mukoda shows him the venom tarantula corpses from his back. The sight of the spiders almost gives Rodolfo a heart attack, since they're the monsters he was talking about, and he wonders why Mukoda has them. He sheepishly points to Fel, who says that he just punished the spiders for bad behavior. Mukoda thinks he's in trouble for stealing the town's source of income, but Rodolfo reveals that the forest is actually overpopulated with these spiders, so he just solved their problem, happy that his quest is complete. Rodolfo tells Mukoda that he can sell the spider materials for some good money and cook the rest of their meat in delicious ways. Mukoda's face sinks as Fel and Dora drool at the thought of boiled spider meat, but he gives in once Sui asks asks to try the spiders. He asks Rodolfo to sell the materials and process the meat, and the dwarf quickly agrees to his request. While the guild processes their spiders, Mukoda and the other explore the town's clothes market. Mukoda takes a look at some soft fabric, falling in love with the material's quality. However, he gets shocked by the insane price of 1 gold, but realizes that the material is probably worth the cost. Soon enough, the shopkeeper also appears and tells Mukoda that the other towns don't sell this fabric for so cheaply. This gives Mukoda the motivation to buy the golden drip, and he stocks up on clothes before returning to the guild. Rodolfo shows him all the processed meat, explaining that he left the external shells on the legs since the meat loses its taste if it's exposed too long. Mukoda notices that the spider's legs look just like crab legs. Just then, Rodolfo breaks a crispy boiled leg to feed him some tender meat. After taking a bite, Mukoda instantly falls in love with the meat, and his hungry companions quickly come begging for a taste. After announcing that they'll have a crab party, he prepares a bunch of tasty side dishes to eat with the boiled legs. Mukoda also tells Dora to enjoy himself and treat the food as his welcome party, so the dragon happily accepts his offer. As they begin snacking, Mukoda leaves his familiars to chow down while he prepares a special dish for himself. He grills some spider legs, but his partners start begging him for that as well. Left with no choice, Mukoda gives the grilled legs to his friends, who devour them without hesitation. As Mukoda grills another batch of legs, Dora says he's glad that he chased him all this way. This surprises Mukoda, so the pixie dragon explains that he always lost track of him because Fel was so fast. Mukoda finally realizes that the poor forest spiders were just attacking because they were scared of Dora, while Fel massacred them without a hint of guilt. Feeling bad for the weak creatures, he decides to pay his respects by thoroughly enjoying their delicious remains. After the feast, Mukoda creates his own bath in the Adventurer Guild's yard. While he relaxes inside with Sui, Fel and Dora lie exhausted in the stables. After getting out of the bath, Mukoda heads to bed, remembering that he needs to return the spider shells to Rodolfo. He feels like he forgot something else, but falls asleep before he can recall it. The next morning, Mukoda returns the spider shells to Rodolfo and gives him some leftover food as thanks. The pleased dwarf happily accepts the meat, but Mukoda thinks he should give him some more food. He starts pulling out his earth dragon corpse, but remembers that this powerful creature could cause incredible shock if he isn't careful. Finally, Mukoda steps aside and lets Rodolfo look at the dragon, leaving the dwarf shocked to his core. He points out that Mukoda could basically buy an entire kingdom with that creature, but Mukoda asks if he can find someone to process the dragon meat first. After thinking for a bit, Rodolfo remembers that there's someone in the city of Dolan who can help, so he gives Mukoda a letter of recommendation for the city's guild master. As Mukoda accepts the letter, Rodolfo admits that the guild master of Dolan is a very talented individual, but he has a strange side to him. Afterward, Mukoda and his party head out of Krail, ready to visit their target destination, the City of Dungeons. Once they reach Dolan, Mukoda is excited to explore, while Fel looks forward to the tough challenges of the dungeon city. Since Mukoda is a certified wimp, he doesn't want to go to the dungeon, but his familiars remind him that he's going there to get some earth dragon meat processed. Excited for the meat, Fel rushes to the city, but they're all forced to wait in line at the town's border. Dora wonders why they can't just barge in, so Mukoda reminds them that they can't just bypass security like a bunch of illegals. After Mukoda calms down his pets, the rest of the people in line finally notice the legendary beasts behind them. Seeing them so terrified, Mukoda quickly tells everyone that the monsters are just his familiars, while the border guards come over to check the commotion. Mukoda tells the guards that he's only there to see the guild master. After he shows them his guild cards, the guards wonder if they should trust him, but suddenly, a handsome elf walks over. The elf says that Mukoda is his guest since he's the one with all the rare beasts. As Elrond introduces himself as the Dolan guild master, his eyes pop out when he notices Dora sitting on Mukoda's shoulder. He takes Mukoda and his familiars inside the guild, saying that Rodolfo already explained the situation to him. Then, Elrond brings out a magic dragon stand for Dora to sit on, but Dora finds Mukoda's bag more comfortable. Seeing it lays around, Elrond quickly starts writing all his observations for his research. Dora feels uncomfortable with the elf's behavior, while the elf wonders why it's acting so differently from its recorded behavior. Then, Elrond remembers the earth dragon, so he starts taking Mukoda to the warehouse to process it. However, his assistant, called Uger, interrupts to remind him that he has a meeting with the merchant guild's leader. As Elrond tries to postpone it, Uger shoots him a murderous glare. Once they get into the warehouse, Elrond asks Mukoda to show him the dragon, remembering how fearsome the legendary creatures can be. He recalls that during his youth, a grand party was organized to kill a dragon. At that time, he was only a B-rank adventurer, so he wasn't even allowed to process the dragon's meat. After that incident, Elrond trained hard to become an S-rank adventurer just to look at a dragon again, but nobody dared to kill another dragon. Now, he finds his wish come true, as Mukoda lays out the giant reptile in front of his eyes. Seeing the legendary creature, Elrond starts frothing with greed, and he pulls out some creepy experimentation tools to start checking its meat. As he starts checking all the dragon's important measurements for research, Fel wonders why he isn't just giving him the meat. Mukoda quiets his hungry dog before Elrond asks him what Dora likes to eat. Mukoda tells him that Dora doesn't actually have a preference, and he eats basically anything he cooks. This information turns Elrond's world upside down, since the research shows that pixie dragons are exclusively herbivorous. However, Mukoda explains that he eats almost everything, especially meat. Elrond is confused about how Mukoda can communicate with the little dragon. When Mukoda reveals that Dora communicates with him through telepathy, Elrond is left even more flabbergasted and starts bombarding him with questions about his beast. Thankfully, Ugur drags him back, apologizing for his master's unhinged behavior. He guarantees that Elrond is a skilled processor despite his goofy antics. So Fel wonders when he'll give him the dragon's precious meat. Elrond wonders if Fel doesn't want the dragon's valuable skin and other materials, but Fel is only interested in stuffing his gut. Seeing Fel so desperate, Elrond starts begging Mukoda to let him taste it. He tells Elrond that Fel gets to decide who shares their meat, so Fel thinks it's only fair to let Elrond have some meat, as long as he can provide some good cuts. Afterward, Mukoda and the gang lie outside, exhausted from Elrond's constant yapping. Fel remembers how much the elf bothered them, asking billions of random questions for his research. Despite that, Elrond couldn't process the entire dragon in just one day, so now they feel like their life is meaningless. Seeing them all so hungry, Mukoda decides to order some instant food. Dora is curious since he hasn't seen the online store before. As soon as Fel spots it, he asks Mukoda if they can get some wagyu this time. However, Mukoda notices that there's a festival going on in Japan, so he orders some festival food. Once the food and ingredients arrive, Mukoda takes out a cooking pot to start preparing. His familiars wonder why he's using such a strange pot, so Mukoda explains that he's going to cook the veggies in it. Fel gets angry since he hates plants, but Mukoda tells him to be patient for the good flavors. He starts heating the pot and puts all the veggies to the side before adding the meat and drizzling sauce all over it. As Mukoda patiently cooks the delicious food, his band of belly stuffers tries to control themselves from going crazy. Once the food is done, Mukoda gives it to Fel, who feels disappointed that half the plate is vegetables. Mukoda tells him to just try it, so Fel takes a bite of the dish. As Fel enjoys the rich flavors, the others also start tasting the food. Soon, Fel gives up the idea of avoiding all veggies and asks for another serving after finishing his current one. Mukoda happily feeds all of his pets before taking out some butter sandwiches to eat. As he opens the box of sandwiches, Sui curiously comes up, so Mukoda gives him a sandwich to try. The baby slime instantly falls in love with the sweet treat, and the other two come over after seeing its delighted reaction. Fel and Dora wonder if sweets can be good too, so Mukoda gives them some sandwiches as well. As both of them try it, they enjoy the sweet, but the sandwich feels too small for them. They start demanding their master for more treats, who wonders what he did to deserve such greedy partners. The next day, a sleep-deprived Mukoda heads to the Adventurers Guild after his familiars kept pestering him about the dragon meat all night. As he greets Ugur, Elrond comes out of his warehouse, looking like he just ran 5 marathons straight. Excited, he explains that he spent the entire last night researching and experimenting on the dragon's body, so now he's finally ready to actually butcher it. Once he's ready, Elrond takes out a special mithril knife to pierce the dragon's tough skin. However, when he tries to cut it, the knife shatters like glass, leaving everyone stunned. Elrond starts crying that he broke his guild's precious treasure. Fel asks him how he plans to process the precious dragon meat without a knife. Elrond responds that he'll need to prepare a blade even stronger than mithril, so he'll have to wait a while before he can process the dragon. This news sends Fel into depression, and he collapses from the sheer emotional trauma. On the ground, Fel thinks his life is ruined. While Ugur points out that their guild doesn't have any other mithril knives, he tells Mukoda that they need to get more mithril ore from the dungeon to craft a new blade, so Fel immediately gets up to dash over there. Mukoda stops his hungry dog, reminding him that if he went all out and destroyed everything in the dungeon just to get some mithril, he'd become too popular and would ruin their peaceful life. After Mukoda's warning, Fel finally calms down, so he starts preparing a normal lunch to cheer him up. He takes out some thinly sliced orc meat, preparing it with the leftover veggies from their previous lunch. While flipping the ingredients in a frying pan, Mukoda adds the sauces and spices, adding the remaining flavor to his dish. Once the food is cooked, he pours it all over fragrant boiled rice to complete the dish. Before Fel can dig in, Mukoda adds an egg to his dish just for some extra flavor. As everyone starts eating the tasty dish, they quickly forget about the precious dragon meat. Mukoda feels relieved that he doesn't have to deal with their whining, but he knows that he needs to fix the dragon problem as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the sky, the 4 goddesses goddesses keep crying that Mukoda isn't sending them any gifts. Suddenly, two men pop up, angry that the girls are abusing their powers to extort gifts from a weakling. Hearing them argue with each other, Mukoda tells the goddesses to leave him out of it. But the two men butt in. One of them introduces himself as the god of blacksmithing called Hephaestus, while the other calls himself the god of war, named Vahan. When Mukoda learns that Hephaestus is a blacksmith, he asks if the god can do something about the knife. Hephaestus responds that he can enhance any blade he makes to be of a higher quality. Of course, he isn't ready to just hand out his blacksmithing blessing for free, so Hephaestus demands some alcohol from him. Meanwhile, Vahan is interested in the otherworldly items from Mukoda's supermarket, which angers the girls. Naturally, Hephaestus ignores them and focuses on giving Mukoda his blessings, but he realizes that Mukoda doesn't have any talent for blacksmithing. Then, the god's attention falls on Sui, whom he thinks has great potential. Seeing that Hephaestus can't buff Mukoda, Vagon decides to take the chance and enhance his war powers. However, Mukoda refuses, saying he doesn't like fighting, but Vagon reminds him that he's going to explore a dungeon soon. Then, he starts thinking about another target, so Mukoda tells him to bless Fel and Dora. As the two of them begin blessing Fel, Dora, and Sui, Mukoda orders some offerings for all of the gods. Once they receive the offerings, the boys enjoy their food while the girls gush over their beauty products. Remembering Mukoda's past neglect, Ninrir warns him not to forget her offerings again. He feels frustrated that he'll need to send even more offerings to the gods, so he turns his attention to studying Sui's blacksmithing skill. He thinks the dungeon will be a great opportunity to test Sui's new abilities, but Fel reminds him that they already have some pure mithril from the mithril lizard he defeated. Remembering the ore, Mukoda asks Fel why he wanted to hunt in the dungeon, even though they already had some, but the wolf just shrugs it off. Then, Mukoda reaches into his item storage and takes out the mithril chunks. He asks Sui to forge them into special knives, so Sui takes the chunks and dissolves them inside its body. After lots of bubbling and gurgling, Sui finally produces a beautiful crystal knife, and Mukoda immediately notices it's of high quality. He's relieved that they don't have to risk their lives in the dangerous dungeon, but Fel gets annoyed since he wanted to try eating some exotic dungeon monsters. Afterward, Mukoda visits Elrond, who's having an existential crisis because he can't find a blade better than mithril. Seeing him so distraught, Mukoda gives Yugur the mithril knife that Sui crafted and asks him to pass it to Elrond. The elf carefully brings the knife close to the dragon's body, terrified that even the slightest mistake could shatter both the blade and his hopes once again. However, the knife easily cuts through the tough skin, surprising Elrond with its quality. He wonders how Mukoda got such an amazing piece, but Mukoda acts like he got it from a top secret source. Elrond almost asks Mukoda to reveal his secrets, but he calms down and goes back to processing the dragon. Mukoda wonders how long it'll take him to finish processing the whole thing, so Elrond tells him it'll take at least 3 days. Fel gets angry that he still has to wait for so long, but Mukoda reminds him that the dragon is a huge monster with loads of meat to process. Fel nods in agreement, but suggests they explore the dungeon while Elrond works his magic. Mukoda refuses to go, feeling scared of the danger, but Sui also starts begging to let him have some fun too. Sometime later, they reach the dungeon entrance, where the receptionist warns Mukoda that it might take his party up to a month to make it out. She also advises him to pack plenty of food if he plans to venture into the deeper floors. She explains that no one has ever cleared the 30-floor dungeon before, which makes Mukoda immediately consider packing up and heading home instead. However, Fel starts glaring at him, so Mukoda reminds him that if he doesn't stock up on a ton of delicious food, they'll have to eat rotten scraps in the dark dungeon. This finally calms him down, and they agree to wait. Smiling at their obedience, Mukoda takes them all on a shopping trip, and he buys a bunch of veggies to cook in the dungeon. Then, he notices a magic stove outside a shop. Fel wonders why Mukoda wants such a huge stove, so he explains that it'll be very useful for cooking. Just then, the shopkeeper comes out and starts promoting his products to Mukoda. He explains that the stove also includes a massive oven capable of cooking entire cacatris monsters, which immediately piques Mukoda's interest in trying new monster recipes. When Mukoda asks about the price, the shopkeeper tells him it costs 860 gold. Mukoda almost gets a heart attack from this price, but Fel pushes him to buy it since his bottomless pit of a stomach craves new food. As the others also put pressure on Mukoda, he finally agrees to buy the magic stove. Later that night, Mukoda cooks dinner in some huge stock pots. He asks Sui for some help and starts serving some tender bull meat to his party. The next day, Mukoda decides to cook a few days worth of food before entering the dungeon. For his first dish, he decides to braise some orc general meat. Then, Mukoda makes some red boar cabbage rolls, after which he makes a simple beef and veggie stir-fry. As he adds the ingredients to the stir-fry, he feels satisfied to use up all his remaining ingredients. Then, he adds a ton of vegetables, spices, and meat to a large bowl. Before before boiling it to make a nice orc meat soup. After that, he makes a wyvern stew with a rich gravy, but Fel gets in the way as he adds some sauce to it. With all the dishes cooked up, Mukoda thinks they're ready for the first few days in the dungeon. His hungry companions get excited to dig in, but he reminds them that all the food is meant for the dungeon. Afterward, Mukoda is cleaning his room when Sui comes in with a sword he forged for him. Mukoda admires the blade's sharpness, thinking that with this sword, he should be safe in the dungeon. Sui climbs up his shoulder, happy to help his master, but Yuger knocks on their door for an urgent task. He explains that the Earth Dragon has been completely processed, so Mukoda leaves to prepare his goods before going to the guild. However, Yuger stops him, saying he's too busy to wait for him at the door. Feeling bad for the man, Mukoda heads to the Adventurers Guild, where he finds Elrond gushing over some shiny bottles of dragon blood. Elrond keeps ignoring Mukoda, obsessed with the blood, so Mukoda tries to get his attention. When Elrond finally realizes that Mukoda is waiting for him, he proudly shows off the mountains of dragon materials he got from the processing, saying the past few days were the best of his life. He asks Mukoda if he can buy some of the materials for the guild. Of course, Mukoda agrees since he became broke after buying the magic stove. Excited, Elrond asks him to buy 2 bottles of dragon blood, revealing that they are used to make the most powerful healing potions in the market. He also asks to buy half of the liver, since it has an even more potent effect than its blood. Finally, Elrond asks Mukoda if he can have one of the dragon's fangs to create an amazing sword. Mukoda agrees to sell him all the items, but wonders why Elrond is only buying just a few materials. In response, Elrond reveals that just these few items will empty the guild's entire treasury, so he can't afford to buy anything else. He offers to pay Mukoda close to 4,000 gold coins for all the precious materials, which he happily accepts. Mukoda feels shocked that just a tiny couple of materials were worth so much, and wonders how much total money he can get if he sells the entire dragon. Meanwhile, Fel isn't very impressed since he can't see any dragon meat. He suspects that Elrond is keeping it for himself, and ends up threatening him. However, Elrond calmly explains that he is storing the meat in a special cooling room to keep it fresh. He takes Mukoda and the others inside, where they find an intricate magic ice setup that is storing the tons of meat. As Fel feels satisfied with his prize, Sui helps Mukoda load up all the meat into his storage. While he finishes loading the meat, Elrond shyly asks if he can taste some of the dragon's meat as well. Mukoda nods, remembering his promise to share some meat with him, and the rest of his gang also gets excited to try out the exotic flavors. Delighted, Elrond takes Mukoda to his own house so he can easily cook the meat for them all. Mukoda settles for Elrond's lawn, where he takes out the giant magic stove. Elrond is surprised to see that Mukoda has access to such advanced technology. When he notices Mukoda using his item box, Elrond tries to show off that he has one too. This is the first time Mukoda has ever seen someone else with an item box besides himself. Elrond explains that elves can naturally use high-level magic, but he also combined his wind and forest magic talents to become a top-class adventurer back in his days. As Elrond keeps rambling, Mukoda ignores him and starts cooking. First, he rubs some salt and pepper all over the giant slabs of dragon meat before peeling the vegetables for the dish. After chopping some onions and carrots, Mukoda loads up a cooking dish with the meat and veggies, then pours some olive oil and seasoning over it. Finally, he puts the prepared meat into the oven and waits for it to roast the whole dish as the oven works its magic. Mukoda's familiars continue drooling over the delicious smell. As he watches them, Fel and Elrond start rubbing against each other while trying to get even closer to the oven. Once the food is done, Mukoda takes out the roasted meat and places it on a table for everyone. He pokes the meat with a toothpick, finding out that it's cooked perfectly. As Mukoda slices the roast meat into thinner stripes, he remembers to finish it off with a drizzle of Fel's favorite garlic sauce. After that, he tells everyone to dig in, and they scream in joy before they can even eat. While everyone devours the dragon, Mukoda sits down and takes a bite of his own portion. The meat's exotic flavor sends a jolt through his senses, and he marvels at how dragon meat can blend the taste of so many different kinds of meat. As Mukoda realizes why Fel was so excited to try the dragon's meat, the monsters don't even stop to talk as they continue gulping their food down. Fel thinks that he should hunt a few more dragons for the future, worried that the dragons would go extinct. Mukoda warns Fel not to go overboard. Soon, everyone finishes their first serving and immediately asks Mukoda for seconds. As Mukoda hands out the other portions, he asks Dora if he's okay with cannibalism. The pixie dragon reminds him that he's a different species from earth dragons, so it doesn't actually count. As Mukoda ignores Dora's questionable morals, he notices Elrond crying at his chair. The elf thanks Mukoda for allowing him to experience such a heavenly meal, thinking he's truly blessed that he got to process and eat one of the rarest creatures on the planet. Seeing Elrond's insane amounts of joy, Mukoda is creeped out, but they soon finish their entire meal. On the way back home, Fel feels energetic from all the nutritious meat he just ate. Excited, he announces that they'll visit the dungeon tomorrow, so Mukoda decides to send his offerings to gods in case he forgets later. Later that night, he browses through the desserts section of his online grocery store while the goddesses watch him in anticipation. Watching them wait, Vahan asks Ninrir if she granted Mukoda a defensive skill. She says that she just gave him a wind blessing. Vahan points out that she was too stingy with her blessings, saying that Mukoda could get hurt without proper defense. As the girls stare in dread, Vahan asks them what they'll do if somehow Mukoda loses his life in the dungeon. Hephaestus reminds them that Mukoda is their only key to otherworldly treats, and the girls remain silent. Suddenly, Ninrir goes into panic mode, realizing she needs to protect her living sweets dispenser at all costs. The rest of the girls also realize their mistake, so Hephaestus tells them that he's been brewing a special blessing for Mukoda. Meanwhile, Mukoda wonders what the fuss is all about, and he starts sending his offerings to them. However, Hephaestus talks about giving him a buff, which Mukoda firmly refuses. He doesn't want to get tied down to another god, and this angers Hephaestus. He gives Mukoda the blessing without his consent, and Vahan laughs, happy that he can extort more drinks out of him. The rest of the girls also celebrate, happy that Mukoda is now safe. The next day, he goes back to the dungeon's entrance with his party. There, he meets the nonchalant receptionist from his first town, and she introduces herself as Vainka. Mukoda wonders why she changed cities, and she explains that the Dolan Guild requested help from other guilds since this dungeon has become a popular spot lately. As she calmly finishes the registration, Mukoda realizes that she's just there to look at Fel the fluffball. When he leaves with his party, Vainka steals a glance at Fel, completely in love with him. As they stand at the dungeon's entrance, Dora and Sui feel excited for a challenge. Mukoda gulps nervously as he looks down the dark entrance, so Fel reminds him there's no way they're turning back now. After gathering his courage, Mukoda finally heads down the staircase. As they make their way down the first level, Fel sniffs out some weak monsters in the area. Mukoda notes that the strongest monsters and loot are around the 10th and 15th levels, so Fel tells him to hop on his back to skip ahead to the good part. Ignoring his master's terrified screams, the Fenrir dashes through the dungeon halls, plowing through every monster in his path. Suddenly, an arrow shoots out of nowhere and almost turns Mukoda into monster poop. Luckily, Fel's barrier blocks the arrow, and he tells Mukoda that he randomly stepped on a trap. Mukoda wonders how the dungeon has these carefully planted traps, even though it's a natural structure. Fel explains that each dungeon is like a living creature that attracts humans with treasures, so it can kill them with monsters and absorb their nutrients. While Fel continues his explanation, stronger arrows bang on the barrier, scaring Mukoda to his wit's end. One of the traps even triggers a giant pitfall, but Fel uses a wind spell to glide over it. As the arrogant Fenrir mocks the dungeon for its pathetic traps, Dora and Sui praise him for his skills. After a lot of running, Fel finally reaches the dungeon's 10th floor. Mukoda asks Fel what he wants to do, so he responds that the monsters are still too weak on this level. Knowing that the level's boss is just a venom tarantula, Dora feels bored since it can mow them down like house spiders. To advance deeper, Fel heads straight toward the boss room. When they arrive, they find a group of adventurers trembling in fear at the sight of him. Mukoda quickly tells them that Fel is his familiar, so they calm down. He asks why they're all gathered outside the room's gate, so the adventurers explain that the dungeons have a lot of unspoken rules. It turns out that before one party finishes fighting a boss, the others cannot enter its room. The only way others can enter is if the party asks for help, but even then, they would get all the loot from the boss's drops. After explaining this, the adventurers warn Mukoda that there are bad parties out there who steal monster drops from other people's victories, with one more thing to worry about. Mukoda sits down to wait while the other parties fight the boss. A short while later, his familiars start getting bored, but Mukoda reminds them to be patient. Soon, the final group runs out of the room and tells Mukoda he can go in. He wonders why they're returning from the floor instead of heading deeper, so the adventurers explain that higher level monsters are too strong for them. Understanding their reasons, Mukoda nods and heads inside, where the room turns pitch black. As the terrifying venom tarantula roars at them, Mukoda starts screaming like a girl, but Dora fries it with a fireball. The proud dragon flies around, happy to have his powers enhanced by the god of war's blessing. As the boss's corpse disappears, a bunch of valuable drops spawn from it. Mukoda picks up a bare spider leg, and he realizes that the dungeon automatically processes the items, so he gets the best parts. Despite his exhaustion, Fel rushes him to the next level, where they meet a terrifying orc general as the final boss. Before Mukoda can even finish feeling scared, his gang turns the orc into pork chops. After the 11th floor, their party continues exploring deeper, but everyone gets tired from using their mana. Noticing their hunger, Mukoda wonders where they should set up their dinner, so Fel scouts for an open room. When they reach the open room, they find a bunch of parties resting in the safe space. As Mukoda's group sits down in a corner, they're unexpectedly greeted by Werner's party. party. Surprised to see a familiar face, Werner shakes Mukota's hand, who feels happy to meet some old friends. As they all sit down together, Werner explains that his party recently entered the city to explore the dungeon. Mukota tells them that he was supposed to visit the ocean town of Berlin, but Fel was itching to explore the dungeon first. As they laugh at Fel's antics, the party notices Mukota's new familiars. They get interested in Dora, so Mukota informs them that he's a pixie dragon. Then, they ask about Sui, so Mukota proudly calls it his favorite slime-shaped nuclear warhead, falling in love with the monster's cuteness. The two girls immediately start gushing over Sui and Dora. Werner wonders how Mukota ended up with two more exotic pets besides Fel, but Mukota reminds them that they're just a bunch of selfish gluttons who followed him for the food. Laughing at his own misery, Mukota decides to share some of his dinner with the party. Knowing that the food costs 10 times his net worth, Werner hesitates, but agrees to share since he doesn't want to give it up either. Seeing that Werner's party has some bread, Mukota takes out his wyvern stew to serve with it. For a little bit, the party hesitates to eat the precious cuisine, but they immediately gulp it down after getting a bite. As they all praise the heavenly cooking, Mukota feels happy. But then everyone asks what meat he used for the stew. When he reveals it's wyvern meat, the poor party almost chokes in shock. Werner apologizes to Mukota for eating such a precious ingredient, so he explains that Fel and Sui hunted about 3 truckloads worth of wyverns. Seeing that he has so much meat left, they hesitate, but eventually ask for another delicious serving. After everyone's done eating, Werner's party gets up to explore the floor a bit more. Mukota wishes them good luck, and they leave, so Fel reminds him to get moving to the deeper floors. Soon, they start plowing through the deeper levels, treating the poor dungeon bosses like stray dogs. Once they enter the 16th floor, Mukota notices that the atmosphere of the dungeon has become much more sinister. Fel explains that all dungeons change as you go deeper, but he suddenly steps on a trap tile. As the entire dungeon starts shaking, Mukota clings to Fel, who notices a huge boulder dropping from a trap behind him. Of course, Mukota starts running like a chicken before Fel shatters the boulder with a wind blast. The force of the blast knocks Mukota flat on his face before he gets up again. After a while, the party arrives at the 20th floor, and Dora asks Mukota if he's impressed with their strength. Mukota doesn't care about his family's strength, but he stops when Sui calls out to him, showing a secret area in a wall. When Mukota inspects the hole, he finds a treasure chest hidden in it, so he starts singing praises for Sui, delighted to get some good loot. Before he can carelessly open the chest, though, Fel pulls him back, reminding him that the chest could be a trap. Sure enough, when Mukota uses his appraiser on the treasure chest, he finds out that it's trapped with a poisonous gas that would give him conditions much worse than lung cancer. Disappointed, Mukota gives up on opening the chest, but Fel offers to open it for him since his major blessing can protect him from the poison. Before Fel can open the chest, Mukota receives a message from Ninrir, informing him that since he already has 3 minor blessings from her girls, he should be able to withstand the poison without a problem. As she happily tells him to enjoy the dungeon's exciting challenges to the fullest, Mukota gets up and tells Fel that his 3 minor blessings now have the effect of a major one. Knowing he's safe, Mukota opens the chest, which instantly releases a burst of noxious gas. After the gas clears, Mukota looks into the chest, but finds it completely empty. Angered that he got tricked, he gets the motivation to head deeper into the dungeon and get real treasure this time. After exploring the 21st floor for a bit, Mukota finds an even larger treasure chest, and Fel notes that it must have something special inside. This time, Mukota scans the chest before opening it and finds out that it's just a disguised mimic. However, with the 3 lethal familiars following him, he gets the confidence to open the chest and get its loot. He decides to take out his mithril sword and step forward to open the chest, only for it to reveal a fanged mouth and lunge at them. Scared out of his mind, he mindlessly slashes his sword at the mimic, which turns into a bunch of plywood from his attacks. Soon, the defeated mimic turns into a real treasure chest, and Mukota opens it to find a bunch of precious jewels and accessories inside. Nearby, Dora finds the door to the 22nd floor, so they all head down through it. This time, Mukota is shocked to see that the floor opens up to a vast open sky instead of the walled corridors they had been exploring. Even Fel gets excited to see what the new flue has to offer, but Mukota feels scared that it might have an unexpected danger they can't handle. However, Fel detects someone familiar in the area, so he starts rushing towards them. After running for a bit, he stops at a clearing where a swarm of giant killer mantis ambushes them. The mantises scare Mukota, but Fel easily burns them all to a crisp. While Mukota wonders why he even bothers getting scared, Dora and Sui start yelling at Fel for giving them no chances to fight. Seeing them all argue, Mukota tells everyone that they should take turns fighting so all of them can enjoy themselves. They all agree to his reasonable advice. So when the group encounters a bear next, Dora enters the battlefield. The excited dragon pierces through the bear's body like a knife, while Sui faces a horde of poison butterflies next. Fel warns him that the butterflies can paralyze it to suck all of its bodily fluids, but Sui Sui simply melts them all with its pew-pew lasers. After a while of walking through the floor, Fel detects that the presence from before is getting closer. Before he can go check it out, Mukoda stops him, thinking it's probably the floor's boss. He suggests they boost their stats first by eating some food from his online store. Fel knows that they're strong enough to handle the boss anyway, but he doesn't give up the chance to have some extra treats. As they sit down to order, Mukoda decides to get some premium wagyu along with a bunch of other delicacies. Watching him stack orders upon orders of mouth-watering dishes, the group create a flood with their drooling mouths. Once all the food arrives, they scarf it down in an instant before asking for seconds. Surprised by their speed, Mukoda gives them the second batch and sits down to eat some of his own, before he can even finish his small serving, though his familiars ask him for a third serving. Once they all finish the food, the stuffed monsters plop down to rest. Mukoda decides to check Fel's stats and is surprised by a 50% stat buff. Next, he looks at Dora and Sui, who also have an insane stat buff. Mukoda wonders if he went overboard, but he thinks it's fine since they're going to face a boss anyway. However, his partners get curious to see how much his own stats have increased, so Mukoda pulls up his own stat menu. For some reason, he only got a 5% stat boost, leaving them all disappointed. That was episode 4. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.